You've received the wisdom of the two fingers, have you not? Then I bid you welcome, as a true member of the Round Table.
Hello and welcome to a very special Roundtable Hold. It feels weird, me doing Roundtable Hold by myself. All those other amazing episodes that we've done on lore and unpacking the game and stuff, that's out the window now because Daniel's not here. But I'm going to answer as many of your questions as I can because we put out a little call to do this AMA and people have sent in some incredible stuff. I could have been here all day, but I picked out some of my favorites. It's not to say if your question's not asked, it wasn't one of my favorites. They're all my favorites, actually. So, yeah. So, Coco and I are going to try and get through as many of these as we can. I'm going to kick things off with a bit of general Elden Ring. And this is a lovely one, actually. It says, Primordial Slug here. I've been watching since day one of PTT. The view count on episode 1 was still on double figures when I pressed play. That's amazing. Wait, what's that? Fucking, like, yeah, it's a 10. Under 100 views. Imagine, that's cool to know who those 100 people were. Anyway, doesn't matter. I don't write into things very often, but I've recently had a cancer diagnosis, and I just wanted to say thank you to the three of you for all of the videos and podcasts over the years. You've been with me through a lot of ups and downs, and the last 8 years, and your videos, both new and old, have provided some much-needed comfort in what's been a tough year so far. I'm really sorry to hear that, man, Matt, but hopefully you're through the worst of it, and it's really lovely when we get messages like that from people to say that our stuff has helped them, which is fantastic. He says, but now to my question. I know you're going to these playthroughs blind, but you can't have avoided all the incredible hype and praise Elden Ring received. So I'm wondering how that affected your expectations going in, and has the game lived up to them so far? Thanks again, and I can't wait to enjoy part 2 on the road to recovery. That's from Matt. To be honest, Matt, it's a good question, but it was more like, it's hard with hype and stuff like that because maybe with films a little bit, but with games, I don't really pay attention to it. It didn't really affect my expectations. I think the best thing was so many people that we know and that I trust, like journalists like Simon Parker. I remember like being in the pub with Simon Parker, and if you don't know his work, he's done a lot of really good stuff. And has had amazing access around From games. And he was just like, he doesn't watch the show, but he's aware of it, and we're really good friends. I remember him, he was obviously probably one of the first people to play it, but I remember him just being like, it's one of the best pieces of any forms of entertainment I've ever played, I've ever seen or experienced. And he was like, I just don't know how you're going to do it. And he was like giddy. He was like giggling and laughing and stuff like that about it, which I thought was quite funny. Like the only way it would have affected it if it came out and it was fucking dog shit, because we're definitely going to play it. So if people were like, oh, it's crap, then that would affect it. But like people going, oh, it's amazing, just makes me more excited for it. It doesn't like build it up in any way or anything like that for me though, which is a good thing. But yeah, hopefully you're on the road to recovery, Matt. Thank you. That's a great question. Hi, Gav and Coco. Beanie, you okay? She's asleep. Where are you going? It's over there, yeah? Okay, good. Early on, I asked you all to predict how many deaths Rory would have by the end of the playthrough. To recap, I found the numbers that you said. So this is early doors in Roundtable Hold. Krupa, 837 deaths. Rory, 971 deaths. Gav, 1,053 deaths. At the end of part 1, if I'm not mistaken, you have died 591 times across the 30 episodes. So my question is, how confident are you in that prediction now? And I was wondering if you would predict just for part 2, will he die less or more than he did in part 1? Thanks, love everything you do, Ben H. It's a great question. I'm winning that 100%. Like, I mean, he's done 600 deaths in part 1. So even if they're going to be similar size, because I think we're about 30% through the game. Well, we're about 30% through the game on, when PlayStation says, like, how far you are through it. So if I'm definitely going to win that for one, but also, it'll be over. It'll be over what I said. I said but that's the thing, I don't really know what part 2 is, so I don't know if I can say, but he's obviously getting better at the game, but then the game is also getting harder. So just for you then, Ben, I think he's going to die? I think there's going to be more deaths in part 2 than part 1, I think. But that's based on literally knowing nothing. This is from Sam Dale. Says, hi Gav, do you see yourself doing your own playthrough of Elden Ring once the RKG series is over? Warm regards. P.S. I'm wanking whilst writing this. No. Like, I would never... I feel like I would have experienced it in, like, a perfect way. And although, like, we have talked about we've got a couple of ideas for different things. Like, we were talking in the pub yesterday about, like, you know, we're just scratching the surface of what you're able to do, and we could even do it, like, you know, we've talked about, like, we did like a Bloodborne episode of 3 ways. Like, I think, you know, we were like, we could do a whole 3-way series on Elden Ring, like, of doing, you know, different bosses and things like that. We also, like, Daniel and I talked about, like, a little idea as well that that we were kind of tinkering with about something to do in that kind of respect, nothing to do with, like, a playthrough or anything like that, but would see me have a go. So I'll be up for that. Like, I just think, I don't know, I feel like I've got such a finite amount of time to do anything. I just think sticking, you know, so many hours into this again doesn't really appeal to me, because I feel like by the end of what we've got, it will be the ultimate playthrough. Like we've said, like, you know, it's the definitive Let's Play of Elden Ring, and I just think I'll be ready, I think, once, you know, everything is done, to be like, you know, that's good. I don't feel the need to go to it. That being said, like, I have, you know, in the little bits, I've barely played it, but in the little bits where I've, like, sort of tooled around with it, it does feel like it's a game that I could get on board with, and I would kind of enjoy, because I think the sort of, like, difficulty aspect of the games doesn't really exist to me, I don't think, in the same way, because I've always said, like, I think the people who talk about From games in terms of, like, how difficult they are usually the most boring people, and kind of people who don't get it the most. And I think, like, you know, if the game is hard, there's ways of making it not hard. So that's the kind of, you know, but obviously it's still challenging, and, like, the bosses are still meant to challenge you. But so that aspect of it, I'm not really afraid of, because I like hard games. I just don't like shit hard games. And this is not one of those. So yeah, like, I don't think I would do, like, a complete playthrough of it, because I feel like my time is running out, and I'm only 38 years old. So I definitely, while I wouldn't do that, I'd love to jump in and do something. And, you know, that's not to say that we won't, either, which is good. This is Bobalina. Says, hello boys, Primordial Slug emailing. Love everything you do, and watching you get through Elden Ring fills me with a joy seldom other media can compare with. That's lovely. Even got my own 2 boys, Oliver 10 and Sage 7, great names, starting to watch. They've finished PTT Dark Souls and half of Dark Souls 3. That I don't think they should be watching that. Kids love chapstick eating abominations. Anyway, as for the question, you've seen the odd stuff that happens in the first part of Elden Ring playthrough. How does it compare with what you imagined the story characters would play out? For example, slugs, eyes, talking jars, prawns, etc. Also, any wild theories you've started to put together for the rest of the game? Great question. Well, I mean, like, I kind of didn't have any expectations story-wise or character-wise, other than there's a fuckload of Welsh people in it, and there's been a fuckload of Welsh people in it. So that's lived up to my expectations. But it's, you know, I like the weirdness of the games, and I think we're only seeing a tiny bit of that. If you sort of think, I'm thinking in terms of, like, Bloodborne, I think, I don't know how fucking weird that went. I hope there's a lot of that coming in this, because that would be brilliant. Any wild theories? Well, I think because it's really funny, because Daniel and I mean, like, we always make the joke where it's just like, we're big enough that we can sustain a whole business, but we're small enough that we see every single comment. So lots of people, even though we might not reply to every comment, we see every single one. And that's a big part of our job, is going through them and, you know, just seeing what the reaction of the community is. And it's really funny seeing the comments in Roundtable Hold, because people are like fucking biting my tongue because I don't want to say anything in the comments. You're all so well behaved as well, which is amazing. I've had nothing spoiled for me, I don't think. Or if I have, it's completely out of context, so it doesn't matter. But So it's funny seeing you guys, but I think like the one thing that I've latched on to, and it's not really a wild theory, like I do think I would, because like I really do love in Dark Souls, Bloodborne, all From stuff, I really do love how it's like always ambiguous whether something is good or bad. But I really would like there to be a proper heel turn for Ranni. And while, things are ambiguous, is it good, is it bad, blah, 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 I would love it if it was like, no, she turns fucking full on heel, and turns into a really, really bad character, starts fucking murdering people. I would love that. But I think the one theory that I did chuck out early is to do, and this is the one thing that I'm most excited about finding out in the whole game, is this mystery surrounding the Radagon statue, because I feel like everyone's like, oh, because there's something on that statue that is big. And I think the thing that I chucked out early doors was that I think that he's involved in, I think it's just like, you know, like the death mark is like, if you're involved in that, then it's on your body. And I was like, oh, what if he was involved in that and it's on his body and that's what's on the statue? That's my big theory, but it's good because I feel like I've got enough of a handle on it that I'm really excited. I've got enough of a handle on the story that I'm really excited about it, but also enough that I feel like I know like that much of it, which is interesting. This is from Ankit, who says, I'm loving RETRY Elden Ring, and I can't wait to see how it unfolds. Here are some questions that I'm hoping you can answer. What is a non-clothing piece of RKG merch that you'd like to see for this series? I'm thinking a beverage based on Rory's love of the exploding wondrous fizz concoction would be great. That's a cool idea. I like that idea. That's the thing is like, we've only ever done t-shirts and hats and things like that. It's like, we've talked loads about wanting to do a drink, wanting to do a beer, and I think like that would be that's a good big dream for us to do, but it's just, you know, finding the time to be able to do that. But we know enough people who make beer, and there's a lot of cool places in London as well that I think could really do things. Like there's a really interesting I think they're called Signature Brews, and we kind of know some people who work there. But basically, Signature Brews, what they do is they do small run beers of based around like punk bands and rock bands. And some of those people have got like comparable followings to us, I think. And the cool thing about them is they have bars all over the place, and they have like live gigs there. So basically a band will launch a beer and then they'll go and do gigs at this place. And I was like, well, we could launch a beer and then go do a Let's Play tour around all their different things. I think that's a cool idea. Probably not going to be for this series, but it's a cool idea, I think, anyway. Because we've loved that. I think like we'd love to do like, you know, and in your thing as well, you said PS RKG live show in Chicago when? Well, I think like something like that would kind of fit into it. A really good example of like things getting out of hand with something to do with a live show is when we were back at IGN. I've definitely told this story somewhere before, but I'll say it quickly now. When we were back at IGN, we were asked to come up with an idea for a bit of sponsored content around the Xbox that beautiful digital Xbox, the white one. We were asked to come up with some ideas around that, and the idea that we came up with was I think it was like Daniel and I think it must, yeah. Anyway, the idea we came up with was we would do the IGN UK podcast on tour, right? So, but we would go, I think the people that we chose were Rory, me, and Daniel, I think, just because they were that. So we would go and do an IGN UK podcast in those hometowns. So obviously start in Blackburn maybe, then go over to Northern Ireland, and then come down to Wales for the big party at the end, obviously. And the idea was like we'd be in a van and we'd film it, and then we'd record on the road, then we'd do these live shows of the podcast there as well, and then we would put them out as the podcast and stuff like that. But obviously that is a huge undertaking because we have to find venues, we have to do all that, and we have people helping us. But then, you know, it started going, well, Dale, would be on production, Joe would probably be there as well. So then it's just like, okay, well, you take the whole team out to make 3 podcasts essentially, and while Xbox playing it, that's all. The job needs to be done all the time. So I mean, like, getting to somewhere like that would be really good. I think, like, what we want to do is never do something for the sake of doing it because we don't have to, but, like, do something that makes sense. And I think, like, touring our beer would be really good, I think. But something like that, anyway, I think that's good. This is from Josh. Says Abyssal Slug here. I can't remember when I started following you lads, but I think it was sometime in Dark Souls 1. Anyway, my wife and I, huge fans, and Elden Ring was when I first got her watching you lot. Now we're working back through the archives, PTT and RKG alike, and having a great time. So first off, do we have a name for slugs joining now? Erd slugs, maybe? I love it. Urge slugs, I think that's good. Maidenless slugs, I think that's a good one as well. I like that. He said, which character would you most like to grab a pint with? The old dragon shagger might have fun and tale or two. Thanks for all the laughs, Josh. That's a good one. Yeah, I don't know. I think like an easy answer would be Blythe, but because he seems like a good laugh. But then I think like Jaren, is it Jaren, the fella? Jaren Elden. Oh, fucking hope this is. I never Google Elden Ring stuff. Yeah, Jaren. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, Jaren would be cool, I think, because he just seems like he's seen a lot of stuff. So maybe Jaren, because I like boozing with older people more than I like boozing with younger people, to be honest. But then EG as well, I thought would have been good. But yeah, I think Jaren, one of the Welsh, obviously. But yeah, there we go. Okay, final question. Sorry. Okay, final question in the general Elden Ring section. It says, hello, Primozo Slug here. Love the show and everything you do. Simple question here. What Elden Ring boss weapon would you like to shove up your ass? Keep up the good work. Cheers, AJ. Happy with that one, are you? You sending that to Daniel as well, are you? Or just me? I just get the ass ones, do I? It's got to be Grafted Dragon, I think, because I think that is a fist weapon, so fists go up asses, so that's good, and it's a dragon as well, so there we go. Grafted Dragon up my ass. Right, this next section is a lot of stuff on lore, and lots of people sent in similar things on lore. So I've trying to group these together a little bit. So some of your questions might be amalgamated into these, because a lot of people kind of have picked up on the fact that I'm bang into this lore. But Ben, this is really interesting. I want to kick things off, though, because Ben says, given your fairly unique way of experiencing these games, do you feel that being a passenger experiencing the game secondhand gives you a deeper appreciation to the story? Do you enjoy being hands-off? It's an interesting way of putting that, because I don't really feel like I'm hands-off. I know that's mad, because I don't touch the controller, but like in the same way of like Daniel's obviously not hands off because he's sort of guiding us. In the same way, I kind of feel like that as well, because while like Rory is in control, I'm telling him what to do, but also experiencing it alongside him as well. So I don't really feel like a passenger. It really feels like all three of us are in it. Have got the same amount of stuff vested in it, if you know what I mean. But that being said, though, it's real. Obviously, I get to watch and I get to see a lot more things than Rory does, because even like we were doing a Roundtable Hold, when we get to do Roundtable Hold, it's really fun seeing Rory watch himself play, because he's like, I fucking had no idea this arena looked like this, or and stuff like that. So that's quite funny. So I do get to definitely appreciate things a little bit more, maybe, because I don't have the stress of doing it. But then also at the same time, he doesn't get stressed playing. I would definitely get stressed playing. And Daniel said the same thing. Like, I couldn't do what Powers does. Like, I couldn't fuck about, make jokes, take it all in, and play as well. Do you know what I mean? So that's an interesting one as well. But I think, yeah, because I get to obviously think about things a little bit more in depth maybe at the time, but then also editing it as well, like that makes it a huge part of it as well, because I'm experiencing it first, second, third, I'm like some things I'm watching for like the third or fourth time while I'm editing it. So yeah, maybe actually. This is Brammel the Mammal from the Netherlands, says, thank you for the amazing series RKG has produced. It's by far the best piece of content you guys have put out, at this point at least. In the playthrough, you've been particularly keen to understand more about the lore and quick to connect events with characters, etc. It seems like Elden Ring has grabbed your attention more than previous Souls titles. First of all, do you find this to be the case? And if so, why do you think that is? Obvious answer is, of course, the Welshness of Elden Ring, but I still like to hear your take on this. Looking forward to part 2. You guys are the best. That is interesting. people have really sort of focused in on the fact that I'm seem to be a lot more engaged with the story. But I think that's because the story is way better than and more engaged than all the other games. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that the story's bad in any of them, but I just think there's just more going on here. And I really feel like more than any other game, From or otherwise, this game kind of demands that you're engaged with it. And it demands you to be like a participant rather than just sitting back and playing and, you know, stuff like that. So I think that's definitely an aspect of it, because I think that the way that they put the story together for this is different to fucking films, books. It's different to anything that I've ever experienced. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's definitely an element of it. The Welshness, obviously, there's so many Welsh characters in it, and it's, you know, it fucking looks like Wales, and you know, there's lots of very particular like Welsh language things, which I'm obviously just absolutely chuffing for. But then also at the same time, you know, a lot of it is like credit to Daniel as well, where he's put more effort into, you know, the story flowering in front of us than ever. And I think like Roundtable Hold really helps that for all of us as well, because then we're able to talk about it a little bit more. We're not just playing it, editing it, sticking it out, moving on to the next episode. We're really fucking deep into this world. And I think if I'm always going to engage with something like with a world like this, because there's so much effort in it and it's just so dense and just interesting. So I think like, because I think the game being so good demands you to be a bit more interested in it, you know? Because I think like, I've got to admit, like, I don't like the idea of playing a video game and having a laptop next to me and being like, looking at a guy. Do you know what I mean? I don't like that idea at all. Which is why, you know, I don't know how I would play this game, because I would love to do it without having to go on the internet and things like that, because I feel like having to switch my focus would really take me out of the game a little bit. So I am definitely getting to see the best part of this, because I get to witness it all and I get to, you know everything about it as well. And I think that, you know, because that's what this is, that's what this game is. I don't think it's better or worse because, you know, it's no cutscenes or anything like that. But I just think like the way that I'm getting to experiencing it is a perfect way, because I get to experience everything after the fact. I get everything we do. And this is the amazing thing about, I think, what we're doing is everything that we do in the game has a consequence. Whereas if I was playing this by myself, there'd be loads of stuff that I was doing and be like, I don't know what that is. Like, whereas we get to see what the consequences, like there's everything that we do has a point to it. Whereas I think if you were just playing it by yourself without a guide or anything, you'd be doing stuff and you'd be like, well, I don't even know why I just did that. So I think, yeah, a lot of reasons in there. But I mean, like the Welshness, obviously, it was like top as well. Okay, another last one on the law then says, Gav, do you think you and Rory will ever warm up to Bok? Also, why do you dislike him so much? Love each and every one of you, Vicky. No. Bok deserves to die, and he deserves all the hate we've given him. It's so funny. I didn't realize, obviously, because we go in completely blind and we don't look at anything on the internet. It's so funny going like, oh no, everyone loves Bok and we're massive outliers about it, which is quite funny. And like anytime that we slag him off, like in the comments, it'll always be like, what's this fucking guy's problem with Bok? He's a little waster, mate. You just had a load of interesting ones then about gameplay. Says, loving the show. Got introduced to RKG through a housemate. Shout out to Alan Claw. Well done, Alan. One of my running buddies. We've been for a run once together, but I still call him one of my running buddies because he's a very inspiring man, because he's very good at running and he inspires me to get out and run, which is great. He got into him through his housemate during the pandemic and loved it since. He said, from everything you know so far, what kind of weapon build ability would you love to traverse the lands between with? Just one big dragon? A katana wielding blood ninja? Just a big old wizard? Regards, Kieran. Also, Nick. That's a good question. I think it will be a really fun thing to do, like, only like Welsh adjacent build / weapons and things like that. Like, you know, try and do, okay, what weapon does Blythe use? Okay, we're going to get something like that. Or like dragon stuff, only dragon stuff, just do a big dragon build. But I think I would probably go more towards like strength and dexterity, because those are the kind of weapons that I've enjoyed as well. But I think like it would be quite funny to just anything that has a Welsh connection, do that. I think what I would tend to do if I was doing this, and this is how I play other games. Not that I play a lot of RPGs, though, to be fair. But I think what I would, Final Fantasy, I'm trying to think of like that. But what I would do is probably go like strength and impressive weapons, like silly, like maybe like a cool dex weapon. But then I would I want the ability to like heal myself as well, and I think like defensively. So basically, I can fuck up in fights because I like going sort of hand to hand, like toe to toe sword builds, where I'm just getting involved rather than sitting back and firing a load of spells. That doesn't really appeal to me. So I think that, but I think I would, guard counter like that for me seems like such an amazing move that we're just not using because he doesn't really guard that much. Whereas I think like when you play some other games, like even Final Fantasy VII, I'm playing Rebirth at the minute. Like even that, like the guard stuff in that is unbelievable because it basically wants you to go, you should be guarding. And the same Street Fighter, like some of the guard stuff you can do in Street Fighter. And I love fighting games. Like I think that's kind of where I would kind of go. But I think like it'd be really funny to just do a really silly, I'm only doing well shit build. Says, and this is from Dan. It says, for real though, I just want to thank you guys so much for all the content over the years. I got into your videos early in the DS1 series and have followed closely ever since. That shit carried me through PhD and some mental health issues as a result. Thank you, Dan. He says, which boss so far do you think you'd have the best chance taken in a fight? You'd have to fight them in the boss arena though. I know you're at an advantage seeing someone outside for a second, but none of that. It's a great question. I like to back myself. Not the wolf, not Radigan's wolf. I don't want to do that. Like, I think one-on-one with Radahn would be quite fun because I think it would be kind of like, like the sparring with Rocky and Apollo at the end of Rocky 2, is it? I think that would be good because, there's respect there between me and Radahn. I think that'd be quite good. I actually think it'd be really good. He's not a boss, but I'd actually would like to fight Blythe or like spar with Blythe. I think because that would be quite an interesting fight, I think, going sort of toe-to-toe with him, just in a pure knuckle fight. I think that'd be quite funny. That's some lovely questions. Okay, now we're where I wanted to be in this part, which is Wales. Questions relating to Wales. It says, Gav, based on what you know so far, what are your predictions / expectations for the Welsh Avengers? Where will this story go? Cymru am byth. Greetings from Costa Rica, pura vida. Excellent question. Well, I don't know, but what I'm thinking is what can happen. What I'm trying to think is like, what were my favorite bits of the Avengers? And I like everyone coming together, but the best bit about the Avengers is Civil War, when everyone goes apart. So I think what would be amazing is if there's like a Civil War type thing with the Welsh Avengers, and people go off on different things, and maybe that's what I think could happen. Because I'm not sure who. You never know who to trust or anything like that, So yeah, I'm thinking something bad's gonna happen in them, and maybe someone turns bad. I don't know. That's why I really like. I think Civil War, Welsh Avengers, Civil War. That's my answer. Firstly, loving the show. This is from Harry. He says, in fact, I've been loving everything you've been doing since Prepare to Try. Started back in 2016. I remember being on holiday in Cornwall with my family when the first episode dropped. You all right, Minnie? Anyway, my question is this. Are there any places in Wales that you think would translate well into a From Software game? Either as an open world area, legacy dungeon, or boss arena. I have family that live on Anglesey, and it's Mon, so I've visited quite a lot, and I've always pictured a boss battle happening around Trwyn D Lighthouse or Beaumaris Castle. Can't wait for the next part of the series to drop, although Dead Space has been great so far too. I hope you love the rest of Elden Ring. Lots of love, Harry. P.S. I'm in fact doing what you think I am whilst writing this. Interesting that you say Ynys Môn, or Anglesey actually, is because the one place that I thought would be good is Roscollon in Ynys Môn, which is kind of, you might have seen it, it's quite famous. It's in the sea and it's kind of like rocks and there's like a hole. It's very like Pirates of the Caribbean-y. And I think you could have like a boss fight on top of it, like a really thin boss fight. Because that's the thing that I kind of want more of is not like gimmick bosses, but gimmick arenas. Like, because I can't think of a From fight that's been on, you know, like a thin road or like a thin bridge, where you could like be knocked off and you have to kind of like stand your ground. So something like that would be really good. Because I don't think there has been one like that, where it's been like the fight is being good at guarding or something like that, you know? Because I think that would be really good. There's also a really lovely pub really close to there called the White Eagle, which has like incredible views for a pub. So yeah, we could go in there afterwards as well. Ooh, this is a good one. It says, genuinely, how does it feel to hear all the Welsh actors and actresses in Elden Ring? I'm English myself, not Welsh, but your enthusiasm and love for Wales has always been a highlight starting from 2016. I feel like I've learned so much. That's from Ashley. It's been amazing, to be fair, because I do think we are criminally underrepresented in media, particularly video games as well, which is fucking nuts when you think about, and I'll come on to another question in a minute about folklore and stuff, but it's mad when you think, like, Welsh people are the funniest people. So it's mad to me that our film industry isn't, like, the best. But, like, I think, like, we're always, you know, we're a smaller country than places like Ireland, who now, look where they are in terms of, like, films and, you know, representation and stuff like that. Whereas, like, you know, like they've just fucking won Oscars and stuff like that. And I think like we've always been a little bit, you know, just behind them, so hopefully we'll have a big boom. And, you know, we'll start seeing more representation and stuff like that. But I mean, like the thing that I kind of like blows my mind with video games, and like I talk about us being a little bit, you know, behind the curve with stuff in Wales. The thing that I kind of can't get my head around is how we're not making a bigger thing of the fact that like, arguably the best game that's been released in the last X years is full of fucking Welsh people. I don't understand how we're not going on about it. And it's sort of freaking me out. But I mean, like but it's hard for me to go on about it because I don't want anything spoiled for me, and I don't want, I don't know, I can't go, oh yeah, like for this, it's hard to talk about Elden Ring when you've only seen a tiny bit of it. But I feel like we should be shouting more about Welsh people. But that's the thing, Welsh people will shout about ourselves because we're quite loud at letting people know that we are Welsh, because it's the best country in the world, it's the best people in the world. And like I said, it's like the funniest people in the world, like by far. Most interesting people, most creative people. Oh my God, Welsh people are great. But yeah, no, it's been amazing. And every time we run across someone, you know, I just love hearing the accent. And it's quite, I mean, obviously it's a very Welsh thing as well. It's like, I know like two of the actors in there as well, like, well. So that's quite funny. But yeah, there we go. This leads me on to a really good one. It says, Gav, if Michael Zaki reached out to you for a new enemy or character inspired by Welsh folklore, what would you pitch? Cheers, Adam. So this is a really good question. I've thought about this loads because there's a really amazing story called Gellert, and it's basically, there's a thing called Bedd Gellert, which means like Gellert's grave in Wales. And the story is this hero king, Llywelyn, comes home, and he's got, this hero king Llywelyn, start a bit further, has got a really trusted, and it's like the love of his life, wolf called Gellert, right? And Llywelyn has a baby and leaves Gellert in charge of the baby because they're like best friends, and he trusts Gellert more than anything. Llywelyn comes home, and there's blood all over their house, and Gellert's asleep with blood all over his mouth. So Llywelyn wrongly assumes that Gellert has eaten the baby. So, you know, it breaks his heart to do it, but he kills Gellert. And as Gellert dies with his last whimper, Llywelyn hears a baby crying. And basically, goes to find her, and Gellert has like hidden the baby for safety, and next door to the baby is another dead wolf. So a wolf has come to eat the baby. Gellert saved the baby and killed that wolf, but in the sort of fight, there's blood everywhere, and Llewellyn's come home and assumed wrongly that his wolf ate the baby. And has killed him as well, and obviously breaks his heart that he's done that. And I think it's such a lovely story. I think we're taught in school to like never judge a book by its cover type of thing, or not to jump to conclusions. I think that's the sort of meaning behind it. And I think like it's just a heartbreaking story. It's kind of like Romeo and Juliet-y kind of heartbreak, do you know what I mean? But I think that could translate well to a boss, like Llewellyn is then like driven mad by heartbreak, and you fight Llewellyn heartbroken with this madness next to the grave of his thing. But it's very Siffy in a way. It's like you can see he's obviously, I think Miyazaki's obviously aware of a lot of folklore and things like that, and you can borrow bits and bobs. But I think doing something directly for that would be really cool. Because I've always thought that's quite Siffy as well. And as I said it, then I was like, oh yeah. It's a really interesting question actually on the subject of Wales. He says, my question is, have you ever felt that games like Elden Ring, drawing such direct inspiration from Wales and the Welsh language, have crossed the line into cultural appropriation? I'm from us. Don't jump down from there. That's so high up for you. Don't even think about it. Come here. Just sit down by there now nicely. That's so high up, and I would really not be happy if you did that, okay? I'm from a small country, and I'm usually just excited to have my culture represented, but I often wonder if I should be more critical about outside creators who use the aesthetics of my culture without any recognition of its source. Kind regards, and thank you for PTT and RKG, which have got me through so many rough patches in my life. Mars. I think it's a really interesting thing because we're so underrepresented. No, absolutely not. Can you just go to sleep there? Or I'll put you down. Okay, I'll put you down onto the floor. Are you ready? There you go. She was going to fucking launch herself off that then. So it's a really interesting one. Because we're so underrepresented, I actually really love everything that's in Elden Ring. But I think, there are other cultures that I think feel like they're mined for different stuff. Do you know what I mean? And then sometimes they're done poorly, and it's done maybe not with the best intentions, and not done with like sensitivity or anything like that. Like a lot. This is there's a lot of kind of, when you think about, like, I think voodoo stuff is always the stuff that I'm kind of like, that's so out of order. Like the way that kind of culture or like is misrepresented like terribly. And I think like Maoris get it as well a little bit, like the Maori culture, and I think like American Indian culture get it as well. And I think it's always amazing to see that stuff done well. Like, for all its faults, I think like that new True Detective uses a culture that I had no idea about, but is made by the people who have lived that culture. So I think the stuff that they introduce is new, and I'm like, oh, that's actually, it feels like it's really interesting. But I also have the conversation with like Irish friends all the time, because I was recently early in the year in Dublin, and like an Irish friend asked me, we were out drinking, and she was like, would you rather Wales be represented like Ireland is in media and sort of accepted by mostly Americans, let's be honest, in the way that Ireland is? So we're talking fucking St. Patrick's Day parade, dyeing the rivers green and shit like that. Would you rather, but it's, Irish culture is incredibly popular and very, very famous. Like, would you rather that, or would you rather be underrepresented as you feel that you are? Like, would you rather be a bit quieter as in that way? Or would you rather, like, because I sometimes look at stuff like that, and Scottish people get a really fucking bad rap as well, because anytime you see Scotland on TV, like, I remember, what was it recently? It was not recently, ages ago now, but it was a Black Mirror episode set in Scotland. And like, if you watch the beginning scene where this guy goes home to his like village, and he walks into the pub, this Scottish pub, and like, it's every Scottish stereotype, like, like, do you know what I mean? Like, you fucking cunt, like, and it's that accent, and they're drinking whiskey within about 30 seconds, and all different shit like that. I was like, do I want that? But we're on Netflix, or would I rather us not have that? I don't know what the thing is. I think this is obviously a balance, and I think like Elden Ring, I mean, like, yes, there's Welsh people in it, and yes, it is kind of borrowing from like Celtic culture and things like that, but it's, it's picking and choosing little bits, and I don't think, it's not like, I don't think it's doing a bad job of it. Whereas like, annoying, I think Gavin and Stacey, whatever people think of that, I think kind of put us back a little bit. But then it's also very funny, so I'm not sure. Sometimes it was very funny at the time, So yeah, I think like it's a hard one, and it's not really for me to answer with other cultures and things like that. But I do get a bit miffed when like it's always a Scottish actor for some reason, and it's or an Irish actor before a Welsh actor, and I just think. Sometimes when I see things and I go, that could have been a Welsh actor. Like fucking Mimir, that could have been a Welsh actor. Like, and I could think of a million better actors than Mimir's voice as well. And I'd be more interested in playing Ragnarok, to be fair, because Mimir don't fucking shut up in that game. But yeah, I think we've got a long way to go. But I think stuff like Elden Ring is good, which is why we should be fucking going on about it more. But I think like that's a really hard thing, because I went to see a Welsh horror film a couple of years ago, and it is an absolutely fantastic film called Y Gleedd, or The Feast, and it's a really, really good like horror folk horror film, and I was like, but it still feels like those types of films like now and again we'll be like, oh, the Welsh film has come out this year, and then it's like when we have to wait for another 2 years for another one to come out, because people have to pay the bills and shit like that. So that director now made another film about Welsh culture, and it was fine for TV, and now he's doing like an ITV show, which does look really good, but it's like, well, he's making, say that show gets 2 series, that's him out of the picture for like 3 years. Then it's like, okay, well, you might be writing something while you're doing that, but then when's he going to make these films? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, it's a hard one, because it's like, would I rather have shit representation or no representation? Yeah, who knows? Right, now we're going to answer some questions on production. Let's get into it. So this is from Dr. Nick Riviera, MD. He says, hi, everybody. Hi, Dr. Nick. It says, PTT RKG episode length has slowly been increasing from the 20-minute Dark Souls episodes where we all met to the epic 1.5 to 2.5 hour long Elden Ring ones. How do you balance a tight, snappy cut whilst also preserving the whole journey? Do you 3 lads take turns editing, or does that job just one person's responsibility? Is the final form of the Gav edit simply no editing at all? That's a really interesting one. Because, I mean, like, fucking one, back in when we were doing Dark Souls, we had no idea what we were doing. So, episodes were, like, we had no, like, while there was, like, a vague structure to them and things like that, it's nothing like now. Like, the pre-production that goes into it from Daniel is out of this world. But I think, like, these are, Elden Ring stuff have been a lot longer because, it's just a lot more. There's a lot more to get through, and obviously it's an open world, so it's not just one path. Go here, do this, and then if we get stuck on a boss, the episode is longer. It's like, oh, he's gone off a little bit there. Oh, he's got stuck on this enemy. Okay, he wants to fight that enemy now. Okay, and like we're giving him the enough. While we do have a very strict thing that we want to get through in each capture session, if we go off, Daniel doesn't stop us or anything. If we go, Daniel doesn't stop us at all. But like we do kind of now at the minute, what we're doing is sticking to basically like we film for an hour, stop, have a break, and then film for another hour, stop, have a break. And most of the time that'll be one episode. So 2 hours of capture will be one episode. And like you say, like, how do you balance a tight, snappy cut whilst also preserving the, like, nothing important gets cut, and that's why I guess they're a little bit longer, because there's more important stuff to put in them. But then also at the same time, like, it's up to me really to make it a tight, snappy cut, whilst preserving the whole journey. And it says the you three lads take turns editing. So how we work with editing currently is we have a freelancer called Rich, and there's someone that we've worked with, that I've worked with like on videos since I worked at IGN, which is like 2014, and Daniel's worked with him since before then. And Rich is someone who I think he has a very similar, he's very similar to us. He has a very similar sense of humor to us. He's also an amazing editor as well. And what Rich does is he'll do the first pass on the episode. And what that means is sort of like syncing all the footage, getting everything all like laid down and like the bare bones of an edit done. And like he will cut stuff, but he is on the side of caution. So we've said like never cut any story or anything like that. But then, so what I end up getting is a little bit of a longer edit, and then I'll take that back over and do a second and sometimes a third pass on that as well, depending if it needs it. And what the pass means is me literally sitting on it and it's doing that tightening up. It's doing, like I'll cut out just frames and things like that in between a death and a full screen, or frames between like a reaction or something like that. And I also cut out things that I think I've got a better understanding of what like maybe is funny, because I think Rich finds us incredibly funny. And so like something I'll be like, shut the fuck up, about me mostly. So that'll go as well. But it's honestly like the stuff that I'm doing is, I feel like sometimes it's more like rhythm. And because I feel like there's a rhythm to our show now that we didn't have at the start, because I've done a pass on every main show video that's ever gone out. So every main show should have the same sort of feel to it, and the same kind of rhythm to it, which sounds super wanky to say, but it's true. Like I've been doing this for ages now. I've been doing it on RKG for 5 years. So I know how to make something funnier for sure. Whether or not that's like a cut to a full screen or a cut to a face or something like that. And that's another thing as well that I think I've kind of perfected, is when other people edit things, the tendency is to go like full screen for a big reaction, whereas actually it's much funnier to go to the three of us reacting, because if someone is saying something or doing something silly, unless they're doing it secretly, like Powers is kind of like eyes, or like Krupa's looks at the camera, unless they're doing it's like that for a joke, then yeah, obviously go full screen. But more often than not, if someone is saying something funny, it shouldn't really be in a full screen on just their face. It should be the three of us, because we'll be reacting as well. So you feel a little bit more part of it then as well. So it's just things like that it's annoyingly really hard to teach that. So at the minute, I don't foresee a time where I don't do that on the show, because I feel like that is what I bring sort of as a really big part of it. So I'd like, obviously it's quite hard because I have to sit on every single episode then, which then takes me out of the game for a huge amount of time. But then, that's why the show is good. And I think like to stop doing that, we'd quickly see, it's the same as like, it'd be the same as like if Daniel stopped researching what we're doing in that episode. If he was just like, yeah, let's just go, do you know what I mean? Like the show just wouldn't be as good as it is then. And I think like, we all understand like the importance of those roles as well. But it's also a really, I was talking with someone the other day about editing and stuff, because I think you can teach anyone to edit. If you have a basic knowledge of computers, you can do a basic edit or something. And I think like, I love that when I first started in TV, because I was like assistant producer at a TV thing, and like the gatekeeping that goes on around editing is bonkers. Like I loved editing. Like I realized like, oh, this is cool. I can kind of like tell a little story and stuff like that, and I love doing that, and I still love doing that. But the gatekeeping that goes on around, because I was like, working for a sports news company, I was like, oh, I can put this together. But people were like, no, an editor has to do that because only they know how to do it. Whereas now there isn't that. People are making reels on their phone and stuff like, with really good editing software. And I think like anyone can. So I think anyone, who with half a brain can do that. But I think it's like teaching a rhythm and teaching sort of there's a mood and there's a movement to our shows, I think, which doesn't exist in other Let's Plays that I've seen anyway. Like, I think people overdo it. We call it like the PewDiePie edit or something like that, where it's just like constant, like, doing shit. I don't like watching that. Daniel doesn't like watching that. Like, we're not children. Like, we like watching things that have been well crafted. And that's right down to the editing as well. And it's interesting, he says, like, because I was talking about it with someone recently, and I said, like, this is going to sound so wanky, but I'm going to say it anyway because this is just for you lot. There's a Metallica documentary where they're looking for a new bassist. So it's after Jason Newsted leaves the band, and they're looking for a new bassist. And I don't know if it's just for the documentary or not, but they bring in a guy called Les Claypool, who's the bassist in Primus. I think, is he the bassist? Let me just check. That's just definitely him before I fuck that up. But basically, they bring in the documentary, they show a load of people kind of auditioning for Metallica. Like, I'm not sure how much of it was real. Was he he's a bassist, yeah. So they bring in kind of people like kind of to like audition for Metallica, and they bring Les Claypool and he's from a band called Primus, and Primus are kind of like sort of quite silly punk band, and they do like a lot of like they did have a song on a Tony Hawk thing. I think it was like Winona's Big Brown Beaver. I think that was on a Tony Hawk's game, but it's kind of like slap bass, kind of like ding 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 ding, like quite funny. Great band, amazing band. But obviously Metallica are a lot tighter. But in the documentary, they bring Les Claypool in, and he plays a couple of Metallica songs, and it's like, he knows what the notes are. He's an amazing bass player, but it's just seeing those songs translated into his style. So it's kind of like the same thing was like, I can show someone how to edit, but then it's really hard for them to sit and do the show's style, like which is my editing style of people talking and things like that. So I think that's a really good example of like, while you may have the bare bones of those skills, like it's your style of editing will be completely different. And I like that's how I was trying to explain it anyway. I think that kind of makes sense. But yeah, it says like also is the final form of the Gav edit simply no editing at all. I think the best thing about editing is, if you do a really good job, nobody notices that it's happening. I think the worst bit is just like when you're like, oh, what the fuck just happened then? And you're like, oh, it's because that was a bad edit or a weird edit or something like that, So I think I don't think there'll be ever a point where we don't edit, because that is the show. In the same way, it's like there's not going to be a point where Daniel hasn't turned up with a big checklist and hasn't put hours and hours and hours into pre-production. In the same way, I don't think we're ever going to go, oh, fucking do and stick it out, because that's just not our style, and that's not what you like either. I think like that's the thing. Like, there's so many people when we first started were like, you're fucking doing one video a week. Like, why aren't you doing 6 videos a week? Just fucking top and tailor, stick it out, And I was like, you don't know what you like about the show. And the thing that you like about the show is that it's well crafted and well made. And also, that's the thing that we want to make as well. So yeah, I don't think there'll ever be a time where we don't edit the main show like that. I don't think, because that's how we want to do it. There you go. That was a big one. Hi, Gav. One question for you. What was your favorite of the episodes to edit, and which one was your favorite to film? How would you say that the 2 episodes are different during filming and post-production? That's on Jericho Sampang. Oh, what a great name. This is a good one. So actually, because I was saying about like Rich, Rich doing the first pass for episode 29, where we're trying to get a fucking bit of armor. I said, I'll just do that from the start because I have a good idea of how to get the story of, because with that one, I really wanted to get the feeling of being in the room with us across. And I had a good idea of how to do that and kind of get the mania across from the start. So I was like, I'll take that one. And I think that was that was one of my favorite ones to edit. and film at the same time, because if you watch that is, I think, almost like a perfect encapsulation of what it felt like in the room with us as well. So, and that's, I think, we were losing our minds, like generally losing our minds. So, and I think that really does come across, and you feel like you go on that journey with us, which is incredible. And so I think that was really, really good. But then to film, actually, do you know what? This is a really good example of it, is the Black Knife Mystery episode, which is episode 20 of Elden Ring. Now, this is a really good example of something that when we were filming, didn't feel like my favorite one to film, because it's quite bitty, because Daniel put together it's essentially a concept episode, because it's basically like a murder mystery, sort of. And we're kind of jumping around a lot of different places. And like the Welsh Avengers episode is kind of similar to that as well. Like, they feel, when you're filming them, they feel really bitty, and Daniel is like very much like, okay, production wise, we have to do this, blah, 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 blah. Whilst at the same time making it feel free and making it feel like we're actually making those choices. But the Black Knight Mystery episode is 1 hour and 22 minutes long. It's essentially a concept episode that Daniel's come up with this incredible idea for. Capture of that, I checked, was almost 1 hour 50. And what I got back from Rich, he did a first pass on that. What I got back from Rich was about 10 minutes longer than what actually ended up going out. So what ended up going out is 1 hour 22. What I got back from Rich was like over an hour and a half. So he's cut a lot less. And what I've done is gone through and literally cut down travel time, cut down anything that's like irrelevant, really, because I really wanted us to be focused on that story, like all the way through it. And I think like that is a really good example of like an episode that really came together in the edit, because there's a lot of bits to get through, and you got to make sure that that's there and that's there and that's there. So yeah, it's that was a really good example of that. But like, yeah, capture of that, but also I kind of went through and cut like travel time. So if we're ever like, oh, we need to go here, now we'll be like, we're just there, unless we say something really funny in the travel, but in the sort of travel up to it, which now we're really hitting our stride with being in control of how we're talking and how much we're talking and when we're talking and things like that, because, but also none of that will come across on the episodes, because all you'll see is like the perfect amount of it. And like, I think lots of people say like, oh, is Gav the final form no editing at all? It just wouldn't be good. It just wouldn't be as good. And I think like even me going through and doing a whole pass on just taking out frames, while, yeah, I could not do that, and maybe people would like the episode exactly the same, it just, I don't know, I'd rather go through, and even if we shave 3 seconds or a couple of minutes off the edit, like, it feels a lot tighter and it feels a lot nicer. And I think, like, that's the good thing about the show, and that's why I kind of love it, and that's why people rewatch it. Like, people, will go, oh, I loved it in this bit. Oh yeah, like, do you remember this bit of the? I'm like, yeah, I do remember that, because I specifically made those decisions to kind of like jump into us, go there, So that's a really good example of that. But like, I think like, yeah, like that, those two were really good to edit, but 29 was great to film. But I think as well, like, any of the all the Welsh Avengers stuff has been really, really good to film and has felt like less bitty. But I really love the little concept ideas that Daniel puts together like that, and I hope there's way more of them as well. So this is from okay, yeah. So this is a good one. It says an extra challenge to pronounce my name. So this is an Icelandic name, I think, and it's HRANNAR, and then Icelandic has like a line and a kind of like belly on the line, and then ORARINSSON. I think that's Hranna, because I think H and R kind of make that, because we have RH, which is Hr in Welsh, but I think Hranna, so HR is Hran, so Hrannar, and I think that, like, line with a belly, Not so it's higher up than the belly on a bee, if that makes sense. I think that is TH, and we have a TH in Welsh. That's why I know that. So I think that's Rhanna Thorarinson. Because yes, I think that is a TH sound. So I think it's Thorarinson. So Rhanna Thorarinson. That's how I would say your name. Hopefully that's right. Okay. Says, so Elden Ring is your biggest project, and understandably you'd want to split it up, both for your mental health and also for quality reasons. With that in mind, I have these questions. Does it feel different to split a series up like this? And if so, what are the pros and cons of doing it in your opinion? Did you get the idea to do a trilogy after watching Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, or something like that? And what is your favourite Krupa moment and Rory moment separately? Well, favourite Krupa moment definitely is episode 29, because he is, he doesn't have the stress. I mean, it was a very stressful episode, but he doesn't have the stress of having to get through stuff I've got to take him there, and hopefully that doesn't go wrong, and stuff like that. So you actually get to see a bit more of like what Daniel's like, like outside in the pub and stuff like that, because he's very silly. But sometimes I don't think that comes across on the show because he's got a lot of pressure on him. But with episode 29, he's fucking about as much as we are. So I think that's my favorite Krupa moment. Rory, I think anytime, he's one of the most positive people in the world, but he's also an incredibly stubborn person, which I love sometimes. But like just refusing to back down on like a bridge. What a bridge is. Like just point blank refuse, even though he's obviously in the wrong. Or like, or sometimes when like I feel like him and me have kind of got like an older brother, younger brother type thing going on, where we just constantly roast each other. And I don't think he has any fear, and I definitely have no fear of taking the piss out of him, and he has no fear about taking the piss out of me. So we kind of go hard on each other. But when I said like, oh, can you eat a jellyfish? And he's like, you can eat anything. I'm like, what? And he's like, you can, you should put it in your mouth, you can eat it. And I was like, that is such a childish like brother argument or debate to have, where you're like, you can eat anything to put in your mouth. I'm like, yeah, that is technically true, but that's obviously not what I'm asking, is it? But he'll like double down on something, and I fucking love it when he doubles down on something bonkers. So those are, of Elden Ring, those are my favorite moments for sure. And he says, other than that, you guys have done an amazing job, and I'm proud to have the honor of supporting you. Love from Iceland. Good. So, well, we got that. So, does it feel different to split up a series? I think, no, it doesn't. I mean, like, it was the right move to do. And I think, like, when Daniel and I started talking about Elden Ring, because obviously Daniel put so much effort into pre-production, and while he's presenting ideas of how we can do it to me, for us to kind of, like, navigate how we're going to do it, it was, everything that he brought to me was like Lord of the Rings, and like we kind of like, if this is Miyazaki's, I think this is what the line was like, if this is Miyazaki's like fantasy epic, then we should approach it like that as well, and it'll be our fantasy epic. A lot of fantasy epics are split, and we could do that as well. And I think like I'm like, that completely makes sense for me from a fantasy point of view, and also from a production point of view, obviously, as well, because that awards gives us the opportunity to sort of really present an incredible thing as well, because it's like part one, and we get to work on part one, and then we get to take time then to move into part two and do things differently, and look at our production, and make things better, make things easier, and make the show better in that time as well. So like from a production point of view, it's nice for us to have the time. We don't have a lot of time in between them, but it's nice for us to do that. But there's pros and I think there's pros and cons, but I think like the only cons for me is getting the message across of why we're doing it, because like I think lots of people aren't really used to the way that we make things, because we make Let's Plays, and lots of people make Let's Plays. So it'd be like, well, why aren't you making Let's Plays like these people who have, the Elden Ring thing is on, they've done all these different episodes, blah 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 blah. Whereas like, for us to go, oh no, like a Let's Play show, that a Let's Play series is going to be split like Lord of the Rings, like while that may sound bonkers to some people, like for us it's a cool way of presenting the show. And I don't know. So that's the only cons for me is like just getting the message out to people, because it's really hard to do that when you work online. Whereas like, Lord of the Rings Part 1, 2, and 3, no one is like at the end of Part 1 going, well, this isn't a complete story. Do you know what I mean? Everybody knew like, oh no, that's what it's going to be. And as much as you can try to get that message out to people, it's really hard. There's some people who fucking find our channel, like someone found it the other week and was like, oh my God, I wonder what happened to you guys when you left IGN. And I'm like, what? And there's still some people now who are like commenting on Dead Space going, where's Elden Ring? Do you know what I mean? So it's like, that's the only con for me, is for us constantly to have to get that message out there, because we'll send a message out to you guys and, you're our most, probably most dedicated people because you support us on Patreon and stuff like that. So, lots of the time you guys are going to be like, oh, I understand. Yeah, that's, But then the people who are kind of like a bit more casual will be like, what the fuck is Elden Ring? What the hell is Dead Space 2? That's the only con for me. But yeah, when Daniel first like presented the idea, I was like, oh, I think we should do it like this. I think it just feels cool to do that, but also it allows us to be able to really think about what we're actually presenting to you, which I think is really nice as well. Yeah, so thank you, Rana Thorarinsson, for that. Hopefully I've nailed that. I would be so happy if I have. Okay, this is from Luke in China. So this is the last question on production then. It says, hi Gav, smashing result for Wales against Finland. Oh, that seems like a long time ago now. The Welsh Leeds boys representing big time. Yep, I love all the Leeds players that we've got. I've always had a soft spot for Leeds because of Gary Speed. And basically we have a lot, if you don't get into football at all, we have a lot of Welsh players playing for Leeds at the minute, which is kind of cool. It says, this is, of course, a question for Elden Ring, but also your previous experiences of retry with Rory. Have you all ever thought of the hypothetical situation where Rory literally cannot beat a specific boss? It happened to me with that monstrous ape in Sekiro. What would happen if that moment came to be? Much love from China, Luke. Sekiro is the only time, probably on Dark Souls 1 at some point. Oh yeah, actually, because that was so new to us and it was just like, fucking, this seems so silly and hard. But I think Sekiro is, in RKG terms, that was the last time that I ever thought like, what if we never do this? And like, what happens? Because like, there was some episodes of Sekiro, I think there's 2, definitely the ape, one of the apes, or no, Demon of Hatred, I think it was, where we'd just had to stop. We just had to stop filming because it got too late and we had to come in the next day. And I think that happened twice on Sekiro. That definitely happened with Demon of Hatred. And it was just like, what if we never do? I was generally like, fuck me, what if we never do this? And that is really hard with Sekiro because it's not like you can respec and you can be like, okay, well, he's going to be weak against this. Or, I mean, you probably could have used more arm stuff, but not really. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that is the only times that I've ever thought, what if we really don't? Lawrence as well in Bloodborne. But I think like all those times before RKG, they were scarier because us not be able to beat a boss had like actual real world impediments on it, because it was like, well, Gav has to go interview Vin Diesel, so you've got to finish it, or we have to come back in another day. So that's why like our clothes change and stuff like that in old episodes of Prepare to Try, because it will literally get to the end of our allowance of time to film that day or that week and then have to come in and do it again, So that was, so I more remember like the actual pressures of going, he needs to finish this. He might not, because we need to move on. We have to do other things in our jobs. So that's the only bit, the bad bit with that. But yeah, I feel like with Elden Ring, some of those things are coming. It's been hard in some bits, but he's just better at the game. I can't remember what it is now, but there's one boss. Oh, Coco's having a little dream. You okay? There's one boss that I remember, I think it begins with an M, and it's like, I genuinely can't remember what I'm just fucking about. And I remember like when that was a thing, friends of mine were like, I cannot wait for him to have to take on this boss. So I hope that that's really hard. But I think like what would happen if that moment came to be? He'd have to do it. Like, it might take us days of filming, but he'd have to do it. So that's when the editing would come in then. Like, I'm looking forward to having like a big 4 hours worth of footage to cut down. Like, I hope we get some bosses where they have to be split into 2 parts or something like that, like that would be fucking cool again, because I think that's obviously just the mania and stuff that comes out of that is just bonkers. But yeah, it's like, what would happen if that moment came to be? We would just do it until he did it, and that's it. Like, and Cuphead as well, like, we just had to go until he did it. So like, yeah, like, I don't think we wouldn't be able to like cheat it or anything like that, because we wouldn't feel good about that, and we just wouldn't. You would know if we were cheating stuff and we had to pretend. You would know, because none of us have that skill in us. Like, we don't have that skill to act. We don't have that skill. You would know if we were cheating, if we cheated in any way, I think. But yeah, what would happen if that moment came to be? You just have to fucking do it, mate. So here we go. Right, last few questions then, and these are in a category that Daniel has called MISC, like miscellaneous. He says, "Hey guys, Spencer here from North Carolina. I was wondering if Gav has convinced the boys to get a matching tattoo. Love the series, been a fan since Bloodborne back in IGN. Anyway, cheers to the fools. Let's start mooting that now, right? So we'll start sticking that idea in, because like, what Daniel and I were watching fucking Robert Downey Jr. and Christopher Nolan the other day in a Wired thing, and he's got an Robert Downey Jr.'s got a Avengers tattoo that I think lots of the crew got. So that'd be fucking great for us all to get a prawn at the end of this series, just to sort of commemorate getting it, to finishing the show. I think like that'd be a lovely thing to do. If we don't all hate each other by the end of it. Anyway, cheers into the fools, yeah. Bore Gwener Dagav. So you must send this on a Friday morning, because that means good Friday morning. It says, Primordial Slug here. No, I sadly don't speak Welsh, but I thought I might as well try and give you all a little smile. Hope the internet translation didn't fail me. No, we'd never say, it would just be like Bore Da, which would be like good morning, like not good Friday. Yeah, you've done well there. So movies are obviously a big passion of yours, and are often a topic of discussion and banter on RKG Productions. Aside from the big blockbuster stuff and the classic ones, though, I was wondering if you watch smaller or less well-known movies as well, and if so, what's the last hidden gem you watched was? Last hidden gem that I watched? Well, I think the last 3 films, I think I was looking on my letterbox, actually 3 bangers. I was in town, I can't remember where I was in town by myself in Soho, and I managed to catch Drive Away Dolls at the cinema, which is one of the Coen brothers film. I thought that was just fucking phenomenal. It was just such a good laugh and just brilliant, very funny, sexy, very silly. I thought that was really, really good. I also really, really loved, completely different fucking gear change mine, God's Creatures, which is a very, very dark film with some incredible performances in it, but watch it when, if you check some content warning stuff and things like that as well. But yeah, that was a phenomenal film, I thought, that was. And I also watched The Eternal Daughter, which is a Tilda Swinton sort of like ghost story, and I thought that was phenomenal as well. So those are quite 3 kind of hidden gems, I guess. You can maybe not Drive Away Dolls, but the other 2, I've not seen lots of people going on about them. But yeah, I'm kind of, I'll watch anything. Like, I'll watch anything as long as it's good. I've got a big list of stuff that I need to get through as well. What's my watch list at the minute? Because I've got a lot of stuff in here that I've not seen. But I think what I'm going to try and watch this, weirdly, the one that I'm going to try and watch, because I've been trying to go through loads of Paul Newman films, and can I watch every single Paul Newman film? But they're actually quite hard to get. But it's quite interesting, like, getting favorites of old films as well, because like the other day I was staying with a friend of mine and she'd never seen The Verdict, so I showed her that, and she was just like, same as me when I came out of when I finished watching The Verdict, where I was just like, that film is phenomenal, and it was made in 1982, I think. So it's just like, how is that's just been available for me to watch for all this time? So that's what I love about films as well, is you can just, you can watch them anytime. It doesn't matter when, Matt goes on and it says, personally, I'm lucky enough to live around the corner from a cool little cinema that often plays reruns of classic movies, anime movies, as well as some smaller ones. Actually, the film I do want to see, you actually talk about, it says the last one that really moved me, and I didn't hear a lot of people talk about, despite its Oscar nomination, was Perfect Days, which I think is the Wim Wenders film, isn't it? It's the guy who made Paris, Texas. It says, I can see how it's not for everyone, since it requires viewers to slow down to its tempo and pay attention to the moment to moment of the movie, which is what the story is about in broad terms. I thought it worked brilliantly, and Koji Yakusho's performance is amazing. That's I've not seen a lot of Wim Wenders stuff. I've seen a lot of his music videos because he's done some stuff for like Talking Heads and Asif Avidan and stuff like that, but I've not watched a lot of his films. But I do want to see that. It's still in the cinema, so I might be able to catch that at some point. I do really, really want to watch that. So that's good. But yeah, like I'll go watch anything really. And I live very close to a lot of really good cinemas as well, which is good. So I'm very lucky for that. But yeah, like that's the thing, is like, as much as we love video games and stuff, like we really love movies. And I think like we've done a definitive companion for Halloween, and I think doing more film stuff, I think, is definitely on the cards for Daniel and me, because we just love movies and we love talking about films. Like, basically we'll come in every morning, especially if we've not seen each other a couple of days, and we'll just talk about films. And it's just brilliant. If we can translate that over to a podcast, that'll translate to money in the bank now. Okay, here we go. This says, first of all, I'm loving the show. Fast shaping up to be my favorite series you boys have created, an epic journey. We're only a third of the way through it. So my question for you is, what was the one moment so far that made you go, bloody hell, this is class, a proper wow moment? And what is the one name in the game that you're looking forward to or possibly fearing fighting in the future? So that's a really good question, because I think Margot, that name, I don't know, I don't fucking know. I don't know what it is, but it's a famously hard one, so I'm really afraid of that. I'm definitely afraid of that. But what was the one moment, and this is actually our last question as well, so it's a really nice one to end on, I think. It says, what was the one moment so far in Elden Ring that made you go, bloody hell, this is class, a proper wow moment? I think just in a good way or a bad way, going down the Shifra river well, lift thing, and then going, but there's a whole other area underneath this map. Or like, but anytime that we get transported anywhere, and then we just go like, what the fucking big is this? I think those are all the moments, I think, where you just realize, oh my God, we're like there in this game, like there's so much for us to see and so much for us to do still. So all moments like that, I think I absolutely love. But yeah, there we go. Some amazing questions there. You guys sent in some good stuff, and sorry if I didn't get to your one. I'm sure we'll do more of these in the future as well. But yeah, I really loved that. And you can always reach out to me on. I'm barely on Twitter now, but I'm on Instagram. So if there's any time you want to ask us something, or like message us on Patreon, I'm always in the Discord as well. Like I might not reply to a lot of stuff, but I'm always in there checking to make sure you're all behaving yourselves. But yeah, thank you so much, honestly, for all your support. I love making this show. I love running this business with Daniel and Rory. Like it's great, and I think our best work is 1,000,000% ahead of us, definitely. And I can't wait to see what happens. But yeah, thank you so much for all the questions. Thank you very much. See you later.
You now belong to a select group of fellows. As such, I ask that you remain constant.